by using some of the tools or just by simply being aware, we can lengthen the gap between in reaction, right? Instead of being reactive, we receive an email, instead of straight away typing out 3-word answer and sending it, you can actually take the time to respond, take the time to think about it, take the time to calm down yourself and respond to it more effectively. And that's when I was like, well, there's something happening here. I'm still in the same situation. I still can barely walk. I still exactly where I was a week ago, but I feel more calm, at ease, and accepting of the situation, and I felt better.
On today's episode, breathwork specialist and coach Artur Paulins.
Hi Arthur, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell me, for somebody that has no idea what is breathwork, could you explain it to us?
Yes. So first of all, I'm sure people have been breathing for a while and they know how to do it really well.
I should hope so.
Yes, and but there are some nuances that can be improved or learned. And I see breathwork almost on a spectrum. There's different ways of using the breath for particular outcomes. On one side, it can be quite a practical tool to regulate the nervous system and use different breathing techniques, or just having knowledge about functional ways of breathing that could help improve respiratory function, help with conditions like asthma or hay fever, or just improving the efficiency of breathing for athletic performance. Then somewhere in the middle could be techniques for, let's say, meditation, or something that can help you calm your mind and use breathing in a way as a tool for day-to-day practice, where you are becoming more aware of internal psychological state, and also becoming more aware of your nervous system state. And on another extreme, it can be quite a transformational, intense experience that is quite therapeutic if it's done more of in an intensive way of breathing.
Okay, I was just about to ask you, so what are the kind of day-to-day problems or pain points that people could solve by learning some breathing exercises? So there's quite a few that are practical, like you said, hay fever, maybe breathing better at night even, but there's also a lot of mental and psychological benefits that you could have. So what would you say is the best way for people to learn this sort of practice?
I think oftentimes people come to breath work and they hear about it perhaps, and the biggest curiosity I find with people is them dealing with anxiety or overwhelm, and being able to regulate the state of mind more effectively. And because as we are now in London, there's so many people living here who lead quite intense lifestyles, busy lives, family, kids, work, commitments, all those things are drawing on people's attention, and being able to regulate your nervous system can be a really useful tool. And perhaps initially it's a search for something that can alleviate anxiety. And the good thing is about using the breath is that we can influence the nervous system more directly. Instead of downloading another mindfulness app and sitting down and trying to calm your mind by using your mind and wrestling your mind and trying to, or allowing you to settle, can take some time, right? But with use of your breathing, you can actually actively influence the state of the nervous system. So your physiology, your body relaxes and is now more on a high alert. And then once your body has calmed down, once your nervous system is a bit more at ease, then you can actually notice the gaps between your thoughts without them racing.
Very interesting. So basically you're saying that it is like a little superpower tool that you can just take and hijack whatever, not unpleasant, but stressful situation. For example, when you feel exactly that you are not in control of yourself, that your mind is racing, that your heart is beating, and you're not really sure what to do. Of course, in these sorts of moments, it's very hard to, as you said, use your mind to calm yourself down. So breath is a physical interrupter, a physical tool that you can use to just make impact and make a change in that moment, an instant.
Absolutely, it's practical, it's direct, and the breath is always in the present moment. So when you pay attention to your breathing, it doesn't make sense to pay attention to the breath that happened a couple of moments ago, or think of the breath that's going to happen in a minute or two. It's always now, and it's current state. So it's oftentimes indicator how you're feeling. So if you're just becoming stressed or you're feeling stress creeping up, your breathing already might be changing and accelerating. So you can catch yourself early. When it starts to spiral, you can start slowing down your breathing or use particular pattern of breath and calm down the nervous system. And then, because when we're in this state of fight or flight, when we are under pressure, overwhelmed, we are less likely to make good decisions, good rational decisions in the moment, and we're more likely to be reactive instead of responsive. So actually having those...
What's the difference?
Time between input and output. I really believe that by using some of the tools or just by simply being aware, we can lengthen the gap between in reaction, right? Instead of being reactive, we receive an email, instead of straight away typing out a 3-word answer and sending it, you can actually take the time to respond, take the time to think about it, take the time to calm down yourself and respond to it more effectively. So lengthening that gap, and simple tools can be really effective for that.
So in my own experience, because I've been introduced to yoga and meditation quite early on, 2 things that I use are this 3-stage pranayama breathing, which helps me to settle my mind, to calm myself and prime myself for the day in a very nice way. And then, for example, if I feel that I'm drowsy or I need more energy, I can use the fire breath. So those are a couple of things that I've used, but I wanted to ask you whether you can guide us or tell us or show us how to do a simple exercise, breathing exercise, that you think could help people. I reckon maybe something to do with stress or anxiety, because that seems to be a big plague these days,
yes.
Especially in the city, in any sort of very active lifestyle places, such as London or anywhere else where people might be looking. So something like that.
I think I usually like to share principles first, because I find that when people understand why particular things work or don't work, it's more likely to stick, and they can draw on the principle instead of drawing on a prescriptive ABCD steps, right? And kind of easy principle to understand, especially for calming down the state, relaxing, is understanding what's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. By the way, you don't need to remember this.
Okay, good.
The simple principle is that when we are inhaling, so people listening to this can try it for themselves. So if you just sit down quietly, try to find your pulse, and trying to find your pulse, you can just pay attention when you are inhaling. So extending your inhales and exhales, still breathing through the nose. If you breathe in, you will notice that your heart rate will slightly accelerate. When you breathe out, it will slightly slow down. So that change is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. And this basically is a principle that we can leverage in understanding our nervous system. By simply extending our exhalations compared to our inhalations, we can calm ourselves down. So we spend more time in that phase of this arrhythmia when our heart rate slows down. So as simple as that, you can think of it in a very very precise manner, where you can inhale for 3 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds or for 5. Or if you don't like counting in your head, in your mind, these seconds, you can just simply inhale slowly and try to exhale for a little bit longer and start prolonging those exhalations without forcing it to the point where you feel uncomfortable and out of breath. But by simply doing that, you'll start regulating the nervous system. And with time, you'll start paying attention to reactions of the body and really paying attention to being in your body. And with that sense of groundedness, you will actually realize that the stressful situation that you're facing is actually, even though your nervous system is perceiving it as a survival threat, in reality, you probably are sitting in a cozy, warm, comfortable room, and you had your food, you had your water, you're safe.
Nobody's chasing after you.
Exactly. But you are in this stressful situation that's created through your mind. So you can actually come back to your body, realize what's happening right now, that you are not in great danger, and simply learning that it can be really effective tool.
Yes, very, very true. Because in the end of the day, whenever we are stressed or sad or in any other altered negative mind state, it's usually because we are not living in the present moment. Because as you said, 9 out of 10 of times you're going to be effectively fine. You're safe, you're fine, you have everything that you need for survival and a relatively okay life at the very least. But because we're stuck in this worry and anxiousness about future, what could happen, trying to live out life in your head, which I always say that's a very impossible task to do, and therefore it creates anxiety because you're trying to control something that is literally out of your control. There's no way you can live out right now something in the future that's in your hands. So breath is an amazing tool to anchor you back into the present moment.
Totally. And what I usually like to share with people is that also understanding of this predicament that we're in, right, with our nervous system, our anxiety going and creating these situations in our minds. And I think it's good to look at it not necessarily as a curse that you have to live with for the rest of your life, but actually perhaps changing perspective on it, that it's actually quite an adaptive mechanism of our body to keep us safe, to help us survive, because we as a species have evolved for millions of years in a totally different environment. Only in the recent years, only recent 150 years, we have been in a place where food is no more a scarce resource, and we're relatively safe in Western world, where I'm sure most people will be listening to this. And so seeing this as an adaptive mechanism that is serving the function, and learning how to work with those mechanisms, learning how to work with the physiology that we have inherited from our ancestors, and how we can work with it, and how we can leverage it for actually performing well in our modern day situations, where sometimes we would need to be on edge, sometimes we do need to be focused and alert and have the adrenaline present in our system.
And there are exercises for that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there any one favorite one that you'd like to share?
For focus, or for relaxation?
Maybe for relaxation, yeah. Because I think that's more, how should I say, crucial to know, because you're avoiding a potentially stressful situation where you might do something in haste, or where you're just paralyzed with fear or worry or anxiousness.
So one that comes to mind is probably the simplest and most effective to remember. It's called physiological sigh. So first, when I would share this with people, I would recommend first trying to focus on the body. Instead of just straight away jumping in and starting to do this breathing exercise, actually just taking a moment and grounding oneself. So whether you're sitting on a chair, whether you're standing, but just feeling the support from the surface you are on. First, kind of noticing that and bringing your attention into your body. And then it's a simple technique where you inhale in through the nose and you exhale through the mouth, or you sigh, right? So it's a long inhale. And ideally with these techniques, you want to start inhalation from your abdomen, from your belly. For some, it might be tricky at first, but with time you can develop this as a habit, as a skill. But you can rest your hands on your abdomen.
Because diaphragm breathing is better than shallow lung breathing.
Yeah. So diaphragm is just more effective way of breathing that is, triggers your nervous system less and keeps you more in this rest and digest kind of state if you breathe more diaphragmatically, habitually. So basically what you do is two-step inhale, breathing in through the nose. So it's and sigh out through the mouth. So long inhale. Simple as that.
I feel more relaxed.
And it works quite effectively. And you can do, 3, 5, 10 of those. The main thing I would say, not to force the inhale, not to aggressively breathe in and blow air out, but actually with this attitude towards paying attention to your body, sitting down, relaxing. And as you do those sighs, just imagining your body softening, relaxing, and almost melting as you sigh out. And that will be quite an effective tool to do. But again, the more you practice this, the more it becomes thing that you can draw upon when you need to.
I've had this in my own life actually, when a very stressful day would be, I would have a very stressful day, and I could feel my body changing. I could feel myself tensing up, and then naturally and automatically, I would just start the ujjayi breathing, and just slow down the breathing, and it's incredible how that just brings you back. It's like, if it's almost visual how I could perceive it. It's like if your thoughts are outside of your body and you are dispersed because you're following these thoughts, then the breath and slowing down the breath almost reels all of those thoughts back in, and you feel more in control. That's kind of the feeling that I get when I do that.
And absolutely, that's exactly going back to the first principle I shared about slowing down the exhale. Because when you do ujjayi breath, you're restricting your glottis, your throat, and creating that sound normally. But also what it does, it reduces the amount of air that passes through your airway, so it's automatically slower. And also because you have that sound in the back of your throat, you can actually pay attention to it and pay attention to slow down the breath. And that's why it works. It's as simple as that. So it doesn't have to be anything super complicated.
What is easier than breath, right? And this is the reason why I love it so much, and why I wanted to have this episode and share this with people as well, because even though it's getting more and more popular, it's still not known to everybody that is the super potent, magical, incredible tool that literally everyone has. It's the most accessible superpower that you could have for yourself. And I think we all deserve to know.
Absolutely. And it's anchored in your physiology. It doesn't have to be anything complicated or mystical. It's right there.
Exactly.
For you to access and use.
For you to tap into, absolutely. So in your own life, has there been a moment where a breath work or a breathing exercise has saved you or pulled you out of a very difficult situation?
Yeah, definitely. It was probably one of the early days when I discovered breathwork for myself, because it was a challenging situation at the time where I was still working in the city, quite a busy and stressful job, and I was training jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu on the side, and being quite obsessed with it and training pretty much every day, competing, and using that as a way to escape from work and have my break. And also to my detriment, I was overtraining. I was exhausted, and in one of the competitions, I got injured. So I dislocated my knee. I basically barely could walk. So I was taken out from my fix of training and the physical activity and pursuit of it. So I was just left with the work that I wasn't particularly enjoying, and I was looking for something else. And so I had to face myself. And at the time, I already had breathwork practice. I was already practicing pranayama, practicing meditation, mindfulness. At that time, I already heard about Wim Hof and Wim Hof breathing technique combined with cold exposure. And at that time, when I basically was going to work and then stuck at home, barely being able to walk, I decided, hey, now I have time on my hands. Let me try this. So I started practicing the techniques. I started taking cold showers, and for me, there was a big surprise and revelation. Within a week or so, I felt different. I felt what I could describe more content. And that was like a light bulb moment at the time. I was like, wow.
So it wasn't even as much physical as it was mental?
Yes.
Interesting.
And that's when I was like, well, there's something happening here. I'm still in the same situation. I still can barely walk. I still exactly where I was a week ago, but I feel more calm, at ease, and acceptance of the situation I'm in, and I felt better.
Why do you think cold showers made you feel that way?
Again, I think it's also bringing you to the present moment, because you are there and you're facing the discomfort of cold, and also physiologically, I'm sure it's improving different hormonal levels in my body. So cold does help increase norepinephrine and adrenaline, which is stress hormone, but it is important for for focus, for alertness, and feeling awake and active. So that I think could be one of those things that actually helped my brain function better, being exposed to a bit of cold and also practicing breathing techniques where I'm focused in the present moment more consistently.
So basically you started with the cold showers and then you started incorporating more breathing exercises aside the ones that you were trying. And where did that lead you? Because I wanted to ask you, how did you even get into breathwork as a career? When did this, let's say, interest and perhaps passion at some point become an idea of, okay, I want to do this professionally?
Yeah, so originally by that point I already had been practicing meditation for maybe 4 or 5 years. Just having a 10-minute in the morning practice, nothing too extreme, nothing too intense. And with this experience, when I discovered Wim Hof method, when I realized, okay, there's more to it. There's not just things I've learned off YouTube, go to meditation centers, but actually there's something here. And because of this rapid shift that I experienced in myself, in my psychological state, that I didn't really see any way of getting out of at the time. And it really sparked my curiosity. So basically at the time I was really interested in investigating it further. So I was more curious to find out if it's real, what is this about, and find out more about it. So I just wanted to investigate, and I basically looked up online at the time, and I found that there was instructor training happening, and it was first instructor training that was done in English. And I was like, and the first commitment was a weekend in the Netherlands. So I was like, why not? Let me spend a weekend with a crazy Dutch guy, and what worst can happen. And so yeah, that was the initial, basically, investigation when I was trying to learn about it, find out. Yeah, and I went there, met the guy, learned from him a lot, and
he looks very fun. He seems very fun.
Yeah,
I've done a couple of his courses, and his energy is just not in person, online, and his energy is very contagious. And yeah, he just seems so genuine and almost natural in a childlike manner, and present, very present, and just excited about life.
Yeah, the childlike manner is amazing. That's what I also enjoyed about him, and it was a great experience. Meet him in his house, speak to him, and learn from him, and actually realize, okay, there's something this I want to explore this even further, and beyond Wim Hof method, learn more about breathwork, learn about interactions with the cold and the body, the mind, and that was initial experience. And basically, I returned to London. I started teaching the technique to my friends. Literally the next day.
Nice. Best way to remember is to also teach. Yes,
exactly, and that seemed to be my usual habit. When I was learning things, I was just jumping straight into it, and a few months later, I just decided, okay, I'll just gonna leave my job. Leave the stability of it, and without even having any plan, I basically jumped straight into it and tried to figure out as I went along how to teach Wim Hof method first, and then learning from different breathwork teachers, learning how to coach people in movement like personal trainer, and did my yoga teacher training, coaching people, and so it became a massive 5-year journey where I would just learn a lot myself and try to teach along the way, and kind of explore different avenues for working with human mind and body.
Fascinating. Could you share an experience or a transformation or an impact that learning breathwork has had on one of your clients that sticks with you?
It's difficult to pinpoint right now one particular experience, but oftentimes I find, especially when they're kind of prolonged breathing practices and techniques, it's amazing to see change in people's state and how they look and how they speak after these experiences, where they just sound, they're like in awe and really calm. So oftentimes the calmness of after the experiences is just amazing, and it's a pleasure for me to be a conduit for holding this experience where people can bring their mind back to themselves and then kind of get out of this stressed, agitated state where they spend most of the time, oftentimes, and actually come back to this relaxed state where perhaps all these troubles doesn't seem such a big deal anymore.
That's very powerful. I'm almost thinking at the moment, I've heard so many people having troubles with meditation or starting meditation if they're not familiar. Could it be that it's almost better for them to try and start with breath work? Because it's easier in a way rather than, the classic, okay, sit down for 10 minutes and think nothing, which is a very bad way of instructing people in meditation anyway. But at least with breath work, there's a very clear instruction and you can measure it. You can follow the instruction and see it real time that it works. And just by calming yourself down in that way and bringing yourself to the present moment, which is an automatic consequence of doing breath work, well, unless it's meant to be ecstatic or energizing, then you see real life results, and then that calms you down and almost primes you to then go into meditation if you keep doing breathing exercises.
I agree. And what I find that, exactly, the breathing helps to have a tangible thing to do, actually, because we're so used to doing stuff all the time, right? So it's difficult just to sit down
and be,
right? So breathing is one of those things that can help you do, so then you can calm down to the point where you can actually be present with the current state. And so it's more tangible, more practical. And with time, I believe how, for me at least, practice with breathwork has evolved is oftentimes going from intensity. So it's useful to start with more of intensive techniques where you can actually feel the difference, feel the buzzing or sensations. And with time, to stick with this practice and kind of refine it, it goes towards more subtlety, where you can start paying attention to more subtle sensations, where you don't need to breathe as heavy or as intensely, and with that subtlety, you can access more of that meditation state where your mind is a little bit slower. You can pay attention to subtle shifts in your body, in your physiology, in your emotional state, and then you are more likely to benefit from meditation, or you're more likely to see that there's something in that meditative state and pursue it further. So it goes, in my mind, I believe it goes from intensity to subtlety, and oftentimes jumping in straight into something subtle where you have to pay attention to your breathing just as it is, or pay attention to sensation in your body. It can be quite difficult.
Yes. And if we think about that could be difficult when it's anchored to your body. Imagine how difficult it is to just ask people to meditate and have a calm mind. Just like that. If we're already having difficulties to even get to that stage through body when we're talking about breath. So I think this is a very valid point to, I guess, talk about and destigmatize and almost shed a light on, that this could be a more helpful progression. So breath to meditation to further spiritual revelation or aperture or self-exploration.
Totally. And I think also meditation is not easy at all. So with my own practice, I've kind of explored different types of meditation, and over the last few years, I've been practicing more Zen. And
what does that entail?
It's Zen Buddhist meditation, which is very subtle in a way that there's not much instruction on them. There's not much instruction on what to do. They're not like steps you can go through. Basically, just count your breath for at the end of the exhalation, right? Then you count to 10 and you start again. So that's the basic instruction, and that's all you get. And then you sit down for a couple of hours and you sit with that. So I think oftentimes meditation is presented as this easy thing to do, quick fix, and I believe it can be hard work. Actually, it's really profound practice to have and to do, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. But it is hard work, and for someone just beginning, it might be too much or unnecessary. And because I think important is consistency and sticking with it, right? Mm-hmm. There's no use of trying it once and never repeating again, but I firmly believe this can benefit so many people. So starting with something that is easy, practical, applicable, and then with time refining it and going more deeper into harder practices or more confronting practices like sitting down and just observing the breath, observing the sensations in the body can be profound. But it just takes a bit of time to get there.
Very valid to share this, that it's not an easy feat. Because a lot of people I've heard, they feel so guilty and they feel inadequate because they're unable to achieve this bliss as soon as they sit down and close their eyes. Because there almost seems to be this expectation that you would, and certainly people that I've spoken to, they feel like they should be able to do that. But, most of the times they're not. And then this practice actually becomes something detrimental to them because they wanted to do something great for them. And now they just feel guilty and bad about themselves. So yes, definitely, people shouldn't, and just ease their ways into meditation and see it as a long-term journey and long-term practice that you get better and better at with time. And as you said, also just showing up. So rather than doing 1 hour once a month, just starting at least with, 10 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day. Start with 5 minutes a day. Everyone can get 5 minutes, yes. Right? And maybe from at the back of what we just said, maybe start with breathwork and just observe your body. And that is your initiation to meditation. That's your entry.
Totally. And even reading books on meditation, on Zen, the blissful state is not the point, or it's not necessarily the thing. You don't necessarily chase a state of some sort. You're basically trying to pay attention to your breath, bring your attention every time your mind wanders, bring it back, and if you have blissful experience, that's besides the point. It's all about the practice and showing up there, and all the benefits almost accrue over time that you notice in your day-to-day life, not necessarily in a blissful, ecstatic state when you meditate. And having been on meditation retreats with other experienced meditators who have been meditating for longer than I have been alive, they talk about how their mind wanders. They talk about how little time out of those hours they capture this, or I don't want to even say capture or find, because that entails making it happen. But when somehow things align and they slip into this state where it's effortless and easy and it's blissful and oftentimes it's quite brief, and it's a relief having gone on these long retreats and spoken with people that they are still practicing. That's why it's practice. It's not
a goal.
Yeah.
It's a continuous practice. It's very, very true. And when I find myself sometimes in the morning, okay, I don't have time for this. But then I feel good. These are the most tricky days when you feel great. Everything's fabulous. You're like, I don't need this. I'm great. I don't need no practices. But then I need to remind myself that no, this is me filling my cup. This is me doing the same as the gym. This is my mind gym. So it's not something that, okay, you'll see results in a day or two, or you won't see any differences if you skip a couple of days. But it's about showing up. It's about showing yourself that is something that you're willing to invest in, that you are something that you're willing to invest in every single day. Yeah. Accumulated effect, for sure.
And it's a skill you're building to deal with your mind. And I think that's an important skill to have, right? Because that's the only tool we have to interact with the world around us, right? Our minds. And having a bit of practice can go a long way to be more effective at dealing with it. And having that is really useful to have it in a daily routine where you start the day and you practice regularly, and you can refine that and develop that. And over time, it shows the benefits not only in that particular moment, but also in your day-to-day life. You can start becoming more calm and grounded.
Which is something that we all, I think, want. So, my favorite question to ask. What is your purpose, Artur?
What is my purpose? That's a good question. I don't... Actually, in recent years, I've stopped trying to ask myself this question. And I think...
Why is that?
in a way that I think it's something that changes over time. So at different times in life, purpose is different for me. I believe for me, it's right now, for me, purpose is, or my focus is on growing, learning, developing, progress, right? Over maybe in a few years, it can be something different.
How did you get to that point of this being the purpose for you,
I
or your
think-
definition of it?
Yeah, I think over time, it actually, a lot of it has been informed through meditation and through these longer intensive retreats where actually I started to see that there's no purpose. There's no particular thing I must do or I must discover who am I, what I should be doing in this world. And I realized that alleviated so much pressure of me, of needing to be something, needing to do something productive and have some sort of identity around my purpose. And that was a relief not to need purpose / identity and just be okay with ordinariness and be ordinary and kind of start noticing how extraordinary ordinary things are, just how miraculous life is. And that helped me to kind of let go of need to have a purpose. And so basically I don't have purpose, but if I would have to define what my focus is on right now, it's progress, it's learning, it's not necessarily to be able to tell myself that I have some sort of worth and application in this world.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. This is the first time I hear this answer, and I really like it. I'm internalizing this right now, and this is why I do this. This is why this podcast exists, right? To share knowledge, to share experience, and I think the understanding that you've come to in regards to your relationship with the word purpose is something that could serve a lot of people as well.
I don't think it's right or wrong. It's just
No.
I
The
believe
world's a
that
big place, right? So
I believe we just discovered for ourselves.
yeah,
And because I really think in our culture, in our purpose-driven society, oftentimes there can be a lot of pressure, especially in young people, to discover what's their purpose. And if at an early age you don't discover your talents or ability or become an athlete or become a musician or choose a career at an early stage, it seems like people can get lost. And I've certainly been lost. And at times I'm still lost. But now I'm learning to accept that as a fact and accept that it all changes, that it all grows, and it's all about only constant that we experience is change.
yes, definitely taking off the unnecessary pressure from ourselves can be beneficial and ultimately actually put you on the path that you've intuitively always wanted to be on. I guess letting go of the expectations from yourself.
But still maintaining the focus, but still maintaining the effort and still pursuing things and doing things in the world.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a surrender in a way that you give up on everything on yourself. You still do things, but potentially try not to overthink too much and have a definition. So in my mind, oftentimes it's better to jump in and start doing things and discover your purpose as you go along instead of trying to work it out
in your head and then try to execute that. And it's always going to be different in real life than it was in your head, always guaranteed. Yet people seem to be always upset that it's not exactly like they thought about it in their heads. That's quite weird if you think about it. So Artur, if I asked you to share with me 3 very precious lessons that you've picked up over the years, what would you tell me?
That's a good question. Precious lessons. Actually, one that's been really impactful for me at an early age. And I think it still carries through a lot. At the time I was, I think 15 or 16. I didn't particularly do well in school. I didn't particularly pay attention much, and I wasn't very academic or interested in kind of organized education. And through that experience, I had the impression that I'm not particularly good at anything. I'm kind of average and pretty bad at most things, right?
And that sort of boxing can make you
Yes.
feel that way. And it does for many students.
Absolutely. And I was in a place where I was not performing well in education. I didn't see the future. I didn't really think about the future. And I think even at the time, I probably thought of myself as lazy or as purposeless, right? And at the time, I discovered martial arts. That was kickboxing first at that age. And I remember I've started, and I wasn't particularly athletically gifted or good at it or flexible or strong or fast.
Hello friends, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share it with someone. I would love to hear your feedback and suggestions as to what guests you would like to see on the show next. See you next week.